Naomi had learned to move quietly through the world, balancing trays in polished dining rooms where no one remembered her name. But that night, the restaurant glittered under chandeliers as a Japanese millionaire arrived, his presence turning whispers into nervous silence. Waiters scrambled, menus fumbled, and not a single soul could understand him, their confusion spreading like wildfire until laughter and sneers rippled from the wealthy guests watching. It was the perfect stage for humiliation, the moment where prestige cracked under pressure. But just as the evening threatened to collapse, Naomi's little girl stepped forward. What no one realized as the child opened her mouth was that this wasn't going to be another scene of embarrassment. They had underestimated her, and in one flawless sentence, she was about to change the course of everyone's night forever. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The crystal chandeliers at Le Bernardin cast dancing shadows across marble floors polished to mirror perfection. Each table wore white linen like a wedding dress, adorned with silverware that caught the light just so. The kind of restaurant where a single fork cost more than most people spend on groceries in a week. Tonight, the dining room hummed with its usual symphony of privilege. Investment bankers dissected market trends over aged wine. Trophy wives compared vacation homes in the Hamptons. Trust fund children pushed food around platinum-rimmed plates, bored by excess before they could even spell it. Through the heavy oak doors, a man entered who made the entire room shift without saying a word. He moved with the measured grace of someone who had long ago stopped needing to hurry for anyone. His suit, charcoal gray with threads that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, fit him like water fits a river. Not a single wrinkle dared to appear. His hair, silver-streaked black, was pulled back in a way that suggested both tradition and precision. Everything about him whispered money, but not the loud, desperate kind that filled most of these tables. This was wealth that had been refined over generations, compressed into diamonds. The hostess, Madison, nearly dropped her reservation tablet. She'd worked here 3 years, had seated senators and celebrities, but something about this man made her straighten her spine and smooth her dress twice before approaching. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Le Bernardin. Do you have a reservation?" The man inclined his head slightly, a gesture so minimal yet somehow containing entire conversations. When he spoke, his voice carried the soft consonants and careful rhythm of Japanese, words flowing like silk being pulled through fingers. Madison's smile flickered. She glanced desperately toward the manager's office. Within moments, Richard Carlyle materialized, his practiced charm switching on like stage lights. The owner of Le Bernardin had built his reputation on reading rooms and reading wealth, and every instinct told him this guest mattered. "Welcome, welcome." Carlyle's voice boomed a bit too loud, compensating for his sudden nervousness. "We're absolutely delighted to have you dining with us this evening." The Japanese man regarded him with dark eyes that revealed nothing, then spoke again in his native language. The words were patient, but carried an undertone of expectation. Carlyle's smile tightened at the corners. He turned to Madison, then to James, the head waiter hovering nearby. Do we have anyone who speaks Japanese?" Blank stares answered him. "Mandarin," Carlyle tried desperately. "Korean?" James shook his head minutely. They had French speakers, naturally. Italian, of course. Spanish for the help. But Japanese? In all his years of premium service, they'd never needed it. The Millionaire, for that's what the whispers had already begun calling him, waited with the patience of mountains. Other diners had begun to notice the small commotion. Heads turned like flowers following sun. "Get him seated," Carlyle hissed to James. "Table 7, our best. And figure this out." Table 7 sat in the room's golden center, where candlelight was most flattering and acoustics carried conversations just far enough to impress without revealing secrets. The Millionaire followed James with that same unhurried walk, as if time itself bent to accommodate him. Meanwhile, in the kitchen's controlled chaos, Naomi Williams balanced 3 plates on her left arm while using her right to steady a fourth. 15 years of practice had taught her body the geometry of service, how to move through tight spaces without disturbing so much as a sauce drizzle. Table 12 wants extra butter, someone called. Behind you, another server warned, sliding past with champagne. Naomi, you're up for 7 next, James announced, bursting through the swing doors. And we have a situation. She set down her plates at the pass, wiping her hands on the cloth tucked into her apron. What kind of situation? Japanese businessman, or investor, or possibly Yakuza, depending on which rumor you believe. James ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, disrupting its perfection. No one can understand him. Carlyle's having a controlled panic attack in his office. Naomi absorbed this information while checking her phone quickly, a violation of policy, but she needed to see the text from Mrs. Patterson next door. A photo appeared. Her 7-year-old daughter Layla, curled up on Mrs. Patterson's couch with a book, safe and waiting. So what does he want me to do? I don't speak Japanese either. Just be perfect. Smile. Nod. Maybe he'll point at something on the menu. James grabbed a wine list. And for God's sake, don't let him leave unhappy. Carlyle will fire us all. Naomi tucked her phone away and checked her appearance in the steel reflection of the pass-through window. Her uniform was pristine. She made sure of that, arriving early to steam out wrinkles that might give anyone reason to look down on her more than they already did. Her hair was pulled back in a bun, so tight it gave her headaches by shift's end, but it looked professional. Polished. Acceptable. She'd learned long ago that in places like this, being a black woman meant being twice as perfect for half the recognition. Every small mistake was magnified, every success diminished. But she had Layla to think about. Layla needed school supplies and winter coats, and chances Naomi never got. Table 7 came into view, and Naomi saw him clearly for the first time. He sat with the stillness of deep water, hands folded on the white tablecloth. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the silver threads in his hair catching light like steel wire. His watch, she tried not to stare, was the kind that didn't need logos because anyone who mattered would recognize its worth. Good evening, sir. Naomi set down a water glass with practiced precision, not a drop spilled. Welcome to Le Bernardin. The millionaire looked up at her, and for a moment, his composed expression shifted to something almost like relief. He began speaking in Japanese, his words flowing with more animation now, hands moving to gesture at the menu, the wine list, the room itself. Naomi maintained her professional smile while her mind raced. She caught nothing, understood nothing. The sounds were beautiful but meaningless, like music in a dream. Oh, let me bring you our specials menu, she tried, hoping visual aids might help. He paused, then spoke again, slower this time but still in Japanese. His tone carried a question, perhaps multiple questions. Other servers had begun to cluster near the kitchen doors, watching. At nearby tables, conversation had dimmed to whispers. This is embarrassing, a woman at table 6 murmured to her companion, loud enough to carry. A place like this should have proper staff. Maybe he's testing them, her companion replied. You know how these foreign investors are. Everything's a game. The millionaire's eyes flickered toward their table, just for a moment, and the couple fell silent. Naomi returned with the special menu, its descriptions in elegant English and French. Useless. She tried pointing to items, miming eating gestures that felt ridiculous. The millionaire remained patient, but his shoulders had begun to tense. Then, James arrived with wine. Perhaps you'd enjoy our Chateau d'Yquem. He displayed the bottle like a trophy. Exceptional vintage. The millionaire spoke again in Japanese, his tone sharpening slightly. He gestured to the wine list, then away, clearly declining. Or maybe the Montrachet. James persisted, misreading the situation entirely. More Japanese, faster now. The millionaire's composure was cracking, frustration seeping through like water through stone. At table 3, Marcus Whitfield leaned back in his chair, gold cufflinks catching light. This is what happens when they let anyone in. The standards have really fallen. His wife, Patricia, giggled behind manicured fingers. Do you think he even knows what fork to use? Probably new money, someone else chimed in. Real wealth speaks the language of wherever they travel. The comment stung Naomi even though they weren't directed at her. She recognized the tone, the casual cruelty of people who'd never had a struggle for anything, judging those they deemed beneath them. The millionaire had gone quiet now, looking around the room with an expression she recognized. It was the look of someone realizing they'd misjudged a situation, that perhaps their time and presence were unwelcome. She'd worn that look herself, in college classrooms where professors questioned if she'd earned her spot, in interviews where they'd already decided she didn't fit their image. Carlyle emerged from his office, straightening his tie as he approached. His smile was so forced it looked painful. "Is everything satisfactory, sir?" He spoke slowly and loudly, as if volume could transcend language barriers. "The food? Very good. Best in city." The millionaire regarded him with cooling interest, then spoke in measured Japanese. Whatever he said made Carlyle's smile falter completely. "Ah, yes, well." Carlyle turned to Naomi. "What has he ordered?" "Nothing yet, Mr. Carlyle. There's a language barrier." Then figured out. His whisper was sharp enough to cut. "This could be the investor from the Matsuda Group, or the CEO of that new tech firm. Do you understand what this could mean for us?" Naomi wanted to point out that understanding would require actually being able to communicate, but she held her tongue. Jobs like this didn't grow on trees, especially not for single mothers without degrees. The dining room had become a theater, every table an audience to this unfolding drama. Forks clinked against plates in rhythm with whispered speculation. Who was he? Why was he here? What did he want? The millionaire pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed the screen to Naomi. Japanese characters filled it, beautiful but incomprehensible. He scrolled down, more Japanese. His expression asked a question she couldn't answer. "I'm so sorry," Naomi said quietly, genuinely. "I wish I could understand." Something in her tone must have translated because his expression softened slightly. He nodded, set down his phone, and began to stand. Panic rippled through the restaurant. The mysterious millionaire was leaving. Leaving unsatisfied. Leaving without ordering. Leaving with stories of incompetence and inhospitality. Carlyle practically ran to the table. "Please, sir, wait. We'll get someone. A translator. Please." But the millionaire was already reaching for his coat. That's when the small voice piped up from behind Naomi. "Mommy." Naomi's heart stopped. She turned to find Layla standing by the kitchen doors, her little backpack still on her shoulders, Mrs. Patterson nowhere in sight. The elderly babysitter must have had to leave. Her own health wasn't great, and brought Layla here as a last resort. "Layla, honey, you can't be here." But Layla wasn't looking at her mother. Her eyes were fixed on the millionaire, wide with recognition of something everyone else had missed. She took a small step forward, then another, drawn like a magnet. The millionaire paused, one arm in his coat sleeve, watching this small girl with beaded braids and light-up sneakers approach his table. Then Layla did something that made the entire restaurant hold its breath. She bowed, not deeply, not dramatically, but with the precise angle of respect she'd learned from someone, somewhere. And when she straightened, she spoke in clear, confident Japanese. "Good evening, honored guest. Would you prefer to hear tonight's special selections?" The silence that followed could have been measured in heartbeats, each one echoing through the stunned restaurant like stones dropped in still water. Forks hovered between plates and mouths. Wine glasses froze mid-sip. Even the kitchen's constant clatter seemed to pause, as if the building itself held its breath. The Japanese millionaire stood perfectly still, his coat half on, half off, staring at this 7-year-old girl who had just addressed him in his native language with better pronunciation than most adults could manage. His eyes, which had remained carefully neutral all evening, widened with genuine surprise. "You speak Japanese?" he asked in his language, the words coming slowly, as if he was testing whether this was real. Layla nodded, a proud little smile tugging at her lips. "Yes, sir. My neighbor, Mr. Ito, teaches me. He says I have a good ear for it. Would you like to sit back down? The fish here is very fresh. Mr. James told me they flew it in from Boston this morning." The millionaire's severe expression cracked, revealing something that might have been the beginning of wonder. He removed his coat completely, hanging it back on his chair with deliberate care. Your Japanese is remarkably good for someone so young. How long have you been studying? 2 years, Layla replied, switching her weight from foot to foot in that way children do when they're excited but trying to be good. Mr. Ito lived in Tokyo for 30 years. He was a teacher there. Now he lives next door and makes the best green tea. He says I remind him of his granddaughter. Naomi stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what she was witnessing. Her daughter, her baby, was conducting a full conversation in Japanese with a millionaire while the entire elite clientele of Luke Bernardine watched in stunned silence. Part of her wanted to grab Layla and apologize for the interruption. Another part couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but watch this impossible moment unfold. Carlyle had turned an interesting shade of purple, caught between relief that someone could communicate with their guest and horror that it was a child, a server's child, who had invaded his carefully curated dining room. Your mother works here? The millionaire asked Layla, though his eyes flickered to Naomi's uniform, already knowing the answer. She's the best server they have, Layla declared with the fierce loyalty of childhood. She memorizes every order perfectly and never drops anything. Sometimes she practices carrying plates at home with books so she can help more customers at once. A soft murmur rippled through the nearby tables. Patricia Whitfield whispered something to her husband that sounded like unbelievable. The millionaire's attention shifted to Naomi for a moment, taking in her frozen posture, the way her hands gripped the serving tray like a shield. Then he looked back at Layla and did something unexpected. He smiled. Not the polite, measured expression of earlier, but something genuine that transformed his entire face. Would you ask your mother if she would permit you to help me with my order? I find myself in need of a translator, and you seem uniquely qualified. Layla turned to her mother, eyes bright with excitement. Mommy, can I? Please? I promise I'll be good and professional like you taught me. Every instinct Naomi had developed over 15 years of service screamed that this was wrong. Children didn't belong in the dining room. Servers' children especially didn't interact with guests. The invisible wall between those who served and those who were served was sacred here, and Layla had just walked through it like it was made of smoke. But the millionaire was waiting, and Carlyle was watching, and the entire restaurant held its judgment in suspense. If the gentleman doesn't mind, Naomi managed, her voice barely above a whisper. On the contrary, the millionaire said in accented but clear English, surprising everyone again. I would be honored by her assistance. He gestured to the chair across from him. Layla looked to her mother once more for permission, and when Naomi gave the tiniest nod, she climbed up onto the seat, her feet dangling above the floor. Now then, the millionaire said, switching back to Japanese, perhaps you can tell me about the menu. But first, what is your name? Young translator. Layla Williams, sir. And you? Takahashi. Hiroshi Takahashi. He pulled the menu closer. Tell me, Layla Williams, what would you recommend? Carlyle had crept closer, hovering like an anxious moth near a flame. Perhaps I should. The young lady and I are managing quite well, Takahashi said in English, his tone polite but firm enough to send Carlyle stepping backward. Layla studied the menu with serious concentration, occasionally asking Takahashi questions in Japanese about his preferences. Does he like spicy food? A little. Any allergies? Shellfish, unfortunately. Has he tried French cuisine before? Many times, but rarely done well. The duck confit is really good. Layla translated for the benefit of her mother, who still stood nearby. But Mr. Takahashi says he had duck yesterday in Washington. He's interested in the halibut, but wants to know if the sauce has cream. He prefers lighter preparations. James materialized with his order pad, looking deeply uncomfortable taking instruction from a 7-year-old, but having no alternative. The halibut can be prepared with a citrus reduction instead of the cream sauce. Layla relayed this in rapid Japanese. Takahashi considered, then responded with what seemed like a full paragraph. He'll take the halibut with citrus, Layla translated. And he wants to know if the vegetables are seasonal and local. He says restaurants often claim farm to table, but really use frozen. Oh, and he'd like sparkling water, not still, with no ice and a slice of cucumber. not lemon. James scribbled frantically. In for wine. Another exchange in Japanese. Layla giggled at something Takahashi said. He says the sommelier earlier tried to sell him a Chateau d'Yquem, like he was a tourist who would buy anything expensive. He actually owns a vineyard in Yamanashi Prefecture. He'll have a glass of the 2018 Chablis, but only if it's been properly chilled to 47 degrees, not 45 like Americans usually serve it. The specificity sent another wave of murmurs through the dining room. This wasn't just money sitting at table 7. This was sophisticated money, cultured money, the kind that could tell temperature by taste and probably own things most people only saw in museums. Mrs. Hargrove from table 9 had been watching with narrowed eyes. She was old Connecticut money, the kind that traced its lineage to the Mayflower and never let anyone forget it. This is highly irregular, she announced to no one in particular, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Since when do we allow children to run around the dining room? Takahashi's eyes flickered to her table, and he said something to Layla in a lower tone. Layla looked troubled. Should I translate that, Mr. Takahashi? Perhaps not all of it, he replied in Japanese, and Naomi caught what might have been amusement in his voice. But you may tell them that in Japan, we believe children who show skill should be encouraged, not hidden. Layla turned to Mrs. Hargrove with the fearlessness of childhood. Mr. Takahashi says children with talents should be encouraged. I wasn't speaking to. He also said something else, but he told me not to translate it, Layla added innocently. He used a word Mr. Ito taught me means someone who talks too much about nothing important. Someone at table 4 choked on their wine. A server in the corner turned away to hide a laugh. Mrs. Hargrove's face went from pink to red to an alarming shade of burgundy. Layla, Naomi warned quietly, but Takahashi held up a hand. The child translates accurately, he said in English. This is the mark of a good interpreter. Honesty, even when uncomfortable. He turned back to Layla and began asking her questions in Japanese, but these weren't about the menu anymore. How did she learn the language? What else did Mr. Ito teach her? Did she practice every day? Layla answered enthusiastically. Mixing in English when explaining became too complex. Mr. Ito has these old books from when he taught at university. And there's an app on Mommy's phone, but it's not as good as talking to real people. Oh, and I watched this anime about a girl who solves mysteries. But Mr. Ito says anime Japanese is too casual for proper conversation. Your Mr. Ito sounds like a good teacher. You know Kigo, formal speech patterns? To everyone's amazement, Layla's posture straightened, and her voice took on a different quality as she replied in Japanese, using honorifics and humble forms that even intermediate students struggled with. Takahashi laughed, actually laughed, a rich sound that seemed to surprise him as much as anyone else. Remarkable. You speak better than my executives who've been studying for years. That's because they probably just memorize, Layla said, switching back to English for her mother's benefit. Mr. Ito says language lives in your heart, not your head. You have to feel it, not just think it. Your Mr. Ito is very wise. Takahashi pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed it to Layla. Do you know this kanji? Layla studied it, sounding out the components. It's integrity? No, wait, sincerity? Close. It means authenticity, being true to one's nature. His eyes moved to Naomi again, a quality that seems rare in places like this. The weight of his words settled over the dining room like fog. Several patrons shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in their plates. James returned with the Chablis, which Takahashi tasted with the concentration of someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. He nodded approval, then asked Layla something that made her bounce in her seat. He wants to know if I can write too, she told her mother excitedly. Can I show him, Mommy? Please. Naomi found her voice finally. Yes, but be careful with the gentleman's things. Takahashi had produced an elegant notebook and a fountain pen that probably cost more than Naomi made in a month. Layla handled both with the reverence they deserved, carefully writing a series of characters with focused concentration, her tongue poking out slightly as it did when she was working hard on homework. This is my name in kanji, she explained. Mr. Ito helped me choose characters that sound like Layla, but mean beautiful night. And this is Mommy's name. Naomi means pleasant beauty in Japanese too. Isn't that cool? It's like we were supposed to learn the language. Takahashi studied her writing with genuine interest. Your stroke order is correct. Many adults never master this. He wrote something beneath her characters in swift, elegant strokes. This is how you would write it in cursive style. Would you like to learn? For the next 10 minutes, the most powerful person to enter Luke Bernardine in months gave a 7-year-old girl a calligraphy lesson while her mother watched in stunned silence, and the elite of the city tried to pretend they weren't staring. Your daughter is gifted, Takahashi said to Naomi in English, his first direct address to her. Languages at this age, with this natural ability, it's rare. She could go far with proper education. Naomi felt the weight of every decision that had led her here, dropping out of college when she got pregnant, taking any job that would pay enough for childcare, pushing aside her own dreams to make sure Layla had food and shelter and stability. We do what we can, sir. Something in her tone must have conveyed more than the words, because Takahashi's expression shifted, becoming thoughtful. He asked Layla something in Japanese that made the girl's face grow serious. He wants to know if I'm happy, Layla translated. And if you're happy, Mommy. The question hung in the air like a challenge to the entire room. When was the last time anyone here had asked a server about their happiness? When had anyone looked past the uniform to see the person wearing it? We're very happy, Naomi said carefully, aware of Carlyle watching, of her job hanging by threads. Layla is my whole world. Layla translated this, then added something of her own in Japanese that made Takahashi's eyes soften. What did you tell him? Naomi asked. Just that you work really hard and sometimes you're tired, but you always help me with homework, and you make the best Sunday pancakes, and you sing when you think no one's listening. Takahashi asked another question in Japanese, his tone gentle but probing. Layla hesitated, then answered in a quieter voice. He asked about my father. I told him we don't need him. We have each other and Mr. Ito and Mrs. Patterson, and that's enough family. The millionaire was quiet for a moment, his fingers turning the wine glass in slow circles. When he spoke again, it was in English, directed at the room as much as to their table. In Japan, we have a saying, the bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists. This child and her mother understand something many here have forgotten, that strength comes not from position or wealth, but from adapting, learning, growing. His eyes swept across the nearby tables. I came here tonight expecting a meal. Instead, I found something far more valuable. Mrs. Hargrove couldn't contain herself any longer. This is all very touching, but surely the child should be in bed, not performing for strangers. Performing? Takahashi's voice carried an edge now. She is conversing. She is bridging worlds. She is doing what your entire staff could not, making a stranger feel welcome in a strange land. He turned back to Layla and asked her something that required a long answer. She spoke for nearly a minute in Japanese, gesturing animatedly, occasionally laughing. Whatever she was saying made Takahashi nod with increasing interest. Mr. Takahashi asked about my school. Layla explained to her mother. I told him about the international festival we're planning, but we don't have anyone to teach Japanese. Mrs. Chun does Chinese and Maria's mom does Spanish. But Mr. Ito can't come because of his hip surgery. Perhaps, Takahashi said, thoughtfully, that is something that could be arranged. His food arrived then, the halibut perfectly prepared, the vegetables vibrant with actual freshness. He tasted everything with deliberation, occasionally commenting to Layla, who translated his approval to James with obvious pride. He says the fish is excellent, but the chef was too shy with the citrus. And the vegetables are really local. He can taste the soil difference. Mr. Ito taught me about terroir. That's French for how the earth makes things taste unique. You, Mr. Ito, seems to have taught you about many things, Takahashi observed. He says education is like hunger. You can never really be full, Layla replied. There's always room for one more word, one more idea. The conversation continued, flowing between Japanese and English, with Layla as the conductor of this unlikely orchestra. Other diners had given up pretending not to watch. Some seemed charmed, others offended, still others simply bewildered by the breakdown of every social protocol they held dear. Then Takahashi asked something that made Layla's face light up like Christmas morning. He wants to know if I can sing. She turned to her mother. Can I? Just a little. Layla, I don't think. But Takahashi was already encouraging her in Japanese, and before Naomi could object further, Layla began singing softly, a Japanese children's song about cherry blossoms, her voice clear and sweet and perfectly pitched. The restaurant fell completely silent. Even the kitchen seemed to pause. Here was this small black girl, in light-up sneakers and school clothes, singing in Japanese to a millionaire while her mother, a woman they'd passed 100 times without really seeing, stood watching with tears she refused to let fall. When Layla finished, Takahashi applauded softly. Beautiful. You have your mother's voice. I heard her humming earlier when she thought no one was listening. Naomi's face burned. She had been humming, an old gospel hymn her grandmother used to sing, while waiting for orders at the service station. She hadn't realized anyone could hear. Tell me, Takahashi said, his attention fully on Naomi now. What did you study before this? He gestured to encompass the restaurant. Hospitality management, sir, at State. But I didn't finish. Why not? The question was simple, but the answer was complicated by years of struggle and sacrifice. Naomi glanced at Layla, who was watching with those big eyes that missed nothing. Life happened, she said simply. Takahashi nodded, as if this explained everything. Perhaps it did. He said something to Layla in Japanese that made the girl look at her mother with something like awe. What did he say? Naomi asked. He said you're like the women who rebuilt Japan after the war. You build foundations so others can build futures. Carlyle chose that moment to approach again, his smile so forced it looked painful. Is everything satisfactory, Mr. Takahashi? Perhaps we could move you to a private dining room where you'd be more comfortable. I am perfectly comfortable, Takahashi replied. Your young translator has made this the most enjoyable meal I've had in months. Yes, well, perhaps the child should stay exactly where she is. The tone was still polite, but there was steel underneath. Unless you have someone else who can facilitate our conversation. Carlyle retreated, but his expression promised consequences later. Naomi could already see her next shift being cut, her hours reduced, a dozen small punishments for allowing her daughter to upset the sacred order of his restaurant. Your employer seems displeased, Takahashi observed. He values tradition, Naomi said diplomatically. Tradition. Takahashi tasted the word like wine, often another word for keeping people in boxes they never chose. He looked at Layla. Tell me, young translator, what do you want to be when you grow up? Layla considered seriously. A bridge. A bridge. Like tonight. You felt alone because no one could understand you. But languages are bridges, aren't they? They help people reach each other. I want to build bridges so no one has to feel alone. Takahashi was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with something that might have been memory or regret or hope. You already are, little one. You already are. The main course had transformed into something more than a meal. What started as a simple dinner service had become an intimate conversation between a powerful man and a precocious child, with the entire restaurant as unwilling witnesses to their growing connection. Takahashi pushed his plate aside, the halibut nearly finished, and leaned forward with interest as Layla explained something about her school's reading program, her hands moving animatedly as she switched between English and Japanese. She reads at a 5th grade level. Naomi found herself saying, drawn into their circle despite her training to remain invisible. Her teacher wanted to skip her ahead, but I worried about her social development. A wise concern, Takahashi replied, his English becoming more fluent as comfort replaced caution. Intelligence without emotional growth creates brilliant but broken adults. I've hired too many of them. He pulled out his phone, showed Layla a photo of a sprawling tech campus with cherry trees lining the walkways. This is my company in Kyoto. We develop educational software, helping children learn languages through games and stories. That's so cool, Layla exclaimed, then quickly translated her enthusiasm into Japanese. making Takahashi smile. Do you make the apps yourself? I used to, many years ago. Now I have teams who are far more talented. But I still insist on testing everything personally. A CEO who doesn't understand his product is just a man in an expensive suit. Richard Carlyle had been hovering near the service station, his discomfort growing with each passing minute. This breach of protocol, a child sitting with a guest, a server engaging in personal conversation, violated every rule he'd built his reputation on. He caught James's eye, made a subtle cutting gesture across his throat. The message was clear. End this. James approached tentatively. Sir, perhaps Miss Layla would be more comfortable in our staff break room? We have coloring books, and... She's 7, not 3, Takahashi interrupted, his tone cooling several degrees. And she's providing a service your establishment couldn't. Unless you'd prefer I return to being unable to communicate. The threat hung unspoken, but clear. James retreated, and Carlyle's face darkened further. Takahashi turned back to Layla, asking her something in Japanese that required a long response. She spoke for nearly 2 minutes, occasionally glancing at her mother, her voice taking on different tones as she seemed to be telling a story. She's telling me about your Sunday routine. Takahashi translated for Naomi. The library in the morning, the park if weather permits, homework at the coffee shop where they know your order, hot chocolate for her, black coffee with 1 sugar for you. Naomi felt exposed, their small life laid bare before this stranger. But there was no judgment in his voice, only a kind of wistful interest. It sounds peaceful, he continued, structured but warm. My daughter. He stopped abruptly, his expression shuddering like windows before a storm. Layla tilted her head. You have a daughter? Had. The word came out sharp enough to cut. Then softer had. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Even Mrs. Hargrove ceased her disapproving whispers. There was something in the way Takahashi said, that single word that carried the weight of universes collapsed into grief. What was her name? Layla asked with the direct innocence only children possess. Naomi started to warn her about personal questions, but Takahashi held up a hand. Aiko. Her name was Aiko. It means beloved child in Japanese. He pulled out his phone again, hesitated, then showed Layla a photo. A girl about Layla's age smiled from the screen, wearing a school uniform and holding a violin. She would be 17 now. She's pretty, Layla said simply. She has your eyes. She had her mother's talent. Violin, piano, 3 languages by age 6. His finger traced the edge of the phone screen. There was an accident. A drunk driver. Tokyo's safest neighborhood, the best private school, all the protection money could buy, and none of it mattered. One man's choice to drink, 30 seconds of lost control, and she was gone. Naomi felt her throat tighten. She instinctively reached for Layla, her hand finding her daughter's shoulder. The gesture wasn't lost on Takahashi. This is why you started the educational software, Layla said, understanding with that startling clarity children sometimes possess. For her memory, for other children who deserve chances. He put the phone away carefully, like storing a precious artifact. I've built schools, funded programs, created opportunities. But I can't. I don't often interact directly with children anymore. It's too painful, Naomi finished softly. Their eyes met across the table, 2 parents understanding something fundamental about loss. One who had experienced the ultimate loss, one who feared it every day. But tonight, Takahashi continued. Looking at Layla, tonight has been different. You remind me that joy still exists, that learning can still spark wonder. Aiko would have liked you. She collected languages like other children collected stamps. Maybe we could be pen pals? Layla suggested. I mean, not with Aiko, but you could tell me stories about her, and I could practice my Japanese. The simplicity of the offer, the pure generosity of it, seemed to catch Takahashi off guard. He cleared his throat, looked away, then back. That would be acceptable. At table 6, Marcus Whitfield leaned over to his companion. $10 says this is some elaborate tax scheme. These foreign billionaires always have an angle. His voice carried just far enough. Takahashi's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a subtle straightening that suggested decisions being made. Tell me, he said to Naomi, how long have you worked here? 6 years, sir. And in that time, how often has Mr. Carlyle spoken to you directly? Not instructions or criticism, but actual conversation. Naomi hesitated, aware of the loaded nature of the question. We all have our roles, sir. Diplomatic. But that's not an answer. For times, she admitted. Twice to discuss schedule changes, once to criticize my uniform, once when a customer complained I was too friendly. Too friendly. Takahashi tasted the phrase with distaste. And this customer complaint, let me guess, you smiled too much? Made them uncomfortable by being a person instead of furniture. The accuracy of it made Naomi flinch. It had been exactly that. A woman who felt Naomi's cheerful greeting was presumptuous for someone in her position. The thing about testing people, Takahashi said, loud enough now for nearby tables to hear clearly, is that they reveal themselves when they think no one important is watching. Or in this case, when they think someone cannot understand them. Several diners shifted uncomfortably. Conversations from earlier, dismissive comments, cruel observations, suddenly took on new weight. I came here tonight for a simple reason, he continued. My company is expanding into America. We need a flagship location, a partnership that embodies our values of education, authenticity, and genuine human connection. I was told this restaurant represented the best of the city's hospitality. Carlyle had moved closer, his face eager despite his earlier frustration. This was what he'd been hoping for. Investment partnership, the kind of association that would elevate his establishment even further. Instead, Takahashi said, I found a place that mistakes exclusion for excellence, that confuses price with value. Your staff panicked at a simple language barrier. Your patrons treated my inability to communicate as entertainment. And when a child showed more grace and skill than any adult here, the response was to try to remove her. Mr. Takahashi, Carlyle began, his voice taking on a desperate edge, surely you understand we have certain standards. Standards. Takahashi stood slowly, Layla scrambling down from her chair. Yes, let's discuss standards. This young lady speaks 3 languages. Her mother works multiple shifts to provide for her, while maintaining dignity you couldn't buy with all your chandeliers. Yet they're the ones who don't meet your standards. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, and handed it not to Carlyle, but to Naomi. I would like to continue our conversation about educational opportunities for Layla. Perhaps somewhere with better standards. Mrs. Hargrove couldn't contain herself. This is absolutely ridiculous. You're going to throw away a business opportunity because of some bleeding heart nonsense about a waitress and her child. Takahashi turned to her with the measured grace of a predator acknowledging prey. Madam, I built my empire by recognizing value where others see only surface. You see a waitress and child. I see a dedicated mother who sacrificed her own education for her daughter's future, and a 7-year-old with more linguistic talent than executives. I pay 6 figures. He said something to Layla in Japanese, and she translated with barely suppressed glee. He also says you've been coming here every Thursday for 3 years. Always order the same salad with dressing on the side, complain about the temperature regardless of the actual temperature, and have never once said thank you to any server. How could you possibly? I asked the busboy while you were all watching the spectacle. He was very informative. In Spanish, which I also speak. The silence that followed Takahashi's revelation was absolute, the kind that made every small sound, the tick of the antique clock, the distant clink of dishes in the kitchen, seem amplified. Mrs. Hargrove's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish, her face cycling through shades of red that would have been fascinating in different circumstances. Then Takahashi's hand came down on the table with enough force to make the crystal sing. They stay. 2 words, delivered in English with the kind of authority that shaped boardrooms and moved markets. Carlyle, who had been moving toward Naomi and Layla with clear intent to escort them out, froze mid-step. Of course, Mr. Takahashi, but surely you understand. What I understand, Takahashi interrupted, his voice carrying the kind of quiet danger that was worse than shouting, is that you were about to remove the only two people in this establishment who have shown me genuine respect tonight. Not because of my wealth, which none of you were certain of until I chose to reveal it, but because they saw someone struggling to communicate and chose to help. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm curious, Mr. Carlyle. Do you know how much your restaurant is worth? I what? Your restaurant. Its market value. The building is leased, correct? So we're talking about reputation, goodwill, client list, staff, though given what I've observed, that last item might actually decrease value. He showed his phone screen to Layla. What does this say? Layla read carefully. $14.7 million, based on recent comparable sales in the district. I could buy this place with what I consider pocket change, Takahashi said conversationally. Turn it into something useful. A community center, perhaps. Or better yet, a school where children like Layla could learn languages from people like your kitchen staff. I'm sure they have stories worth hearing, voices worth amplifying. Carlyle had gone pale, his carefully maintained composure cracking like ice under spring sun. Mr. Takahashi, please, there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Only clarity. He turned to address the room at large. You want to know why I really came here? Why I chose this particular restaurant on this particular night? The diners leaned forward to spite themselves, drawn by the magnetic pull of unfolding drama. 3 months ago, my chief operating officer dined here. A brilliant woman, MIT graduate, speaks 4 languages. She was meeting with potential investors. Your staff seated her in the back corner, by the kitchen doors. They assumed she was someone's assistant, kept trying to take her order while she waited for the real meeting to begin. Several servers exchanged guilty glances. They remembered that night, the woman who'd sat alone for an hour before leaving. Last month, my head of development came here. Pakistani gentleman, doctorate from Oxford, published author on educational technology. He was told there were no tables available despite half the restaurant being empty. He could see the empty tables from a door. The accusations hung in the air like smoke from an unseen fire. So yes, I came to test you. Not your food, which is admittedly excellent. Not your wine selection, though it could use more variety. I came to test your character, your values, the truth behind your marketed elegance. He gestured to Naomi and Layla. And only these two passed. That's not fair. Mrs. Hargrove protested. You deliberately deceived us. I spoke my native language. If that counts as deception, then every immigrant who enters your country is guilty of the same crime. His tone sharpened. Or is it only deception when the person you've dismissed turns out to have power? Marcus Whitfield stood up, his gold watch catching the light. This is entrapment. You can't judge an entire establishment based on how they treat people they perceive as powerless. Takahashi finished. That is exactly how every establishment should be judged. Every person, every society. He turned back to Naomi, his expression softening. You asked your daughter to translate, even though it violated protocol. Why? Naomi straightened, finding courage in his directness. Because you were alone, and I know what that feels like. Because kindness shouldn't depend on someone's bank account. And you? He asked Layla. Why did you help me? Because you look sad, Layla said simply. And Mr. Ito says sadness is lighter when shared, like carrying groceries together. Your Mr. Ito sounds like a philosopher. He says he's just old and tired of seeing people be mean to each other. Takahashi laughed, a genuine sound that transformed the tension in the room. I would like to meet this Mr. Ito. He'd like that. He misses having people to speak Japanese with. His daughter lives in California and only visits at Christmas. Perhaps that could be arranged. Takahashi pulled out his business card again, this time handing it to Layla. For your Mr. Ito, tell him Hiroshi Takahashi would be honored to have tea with a true teacher. Carlyle made one last desperate attempt. Mr. Takahashi, surely we can discuss this privately. I'm certain we can come to an arrangement that my arrangements are already made. Takahashi's voice carried finality. I will be establishing my American headquarters in this city, but not in partnership with you. Instead, I'll be working with people who understand that excellence isn't about exclusion. It's about elevation. Lifting others up, not keeping them down. He pulled out his wallet, left cash on the table that was clearly several times the cost of his meal. For the kitchen staff, not the restaurant, the people actually doing the work. Then he looked at Naomi. I assume you need this job? Yes, sir. Even though they treat you as less than you are. I have a daughter to feed, sir. Pride doesn't pay rent. No, but dignity should be non-negotiable. He considered for a moment. I'll need translators for my team's integration period. People who understand not just language, but cultural bridge building. The position would pay. What do you make here? Minimum wage plus tips, sir. The position would pay $60,000 to start, plus benefits, educational assistance, and a flexible schedule around your daughter's school. He said it casually, as if he hadn't just offered to triple her income. If you're interested, Naomi's legs nearly gave out. $60,000. Benefits. Educational assistance. She could finish her degree, get Layla into better programs, maybe even save something for the future. I don't have formal translation training, but you have something better. You have integrity, and you're raising a daughter who builds bridges with words. He smiled at Layla, who might be interested in interning with our youth education division when she's older. Can I start tomorrow? Layla asked eagerly, making him laugh again. Perhaps we'll wait until you're at least 10. The room erupted. Some diners applauded, others protested. Everyone talked at once. Carlisle looked like he might faint. Mrs. Hargrove was demanding to speak to someone, anyone, about this scandal unfolding. Through it all, Takahashi remained calm, putting on his coat with the same measured grace he'd shown all evening. But before leaving, he turned back to address the room one final time. I want to be clear about something. This isn't charity. I don't believe in charity. It implies superiority, one person stooping to help another. This is investment. Investment in people who have already proven their worth through their actions, their choices, their character. He looked directly at Mrs. Hargrove. You spoke of standards earlier. Let me tell you about standards. Standards are teaching yourself hospitality management while working full-time and raising a baby alone. Standards are learning Japanese from library books and an elderly neighbor because knowledge itself is valuable. Standards are maintaining grace and dignity while people who've never struggled a day in their lives judge you for existing in their space. His gaze swept the room. Every one of you will leave here tonight and return to lives padded by privilege. But remember this moment. Remember that the people who serve your food, clean your homes, watch your children, they have stories, struggles, dreams just as valid as yours. The only difference is opportunity. He paused at Layla's side, bent down to her level. What was it you said you wanted to be? A bridge? Yes, sir. You already are. Tonight, you bridge two worlds that rarely meet as equals. Never let anyone convince you to stop building those bridges. He straightened, nodded to Naomi. I'll have my assistant contact you tomorrow with details. Take the night to consider. It's a real offer, not a gesture. As he moved toward the door, Carlisle made one last desperate plea. This is a mistake. You're throwing away a profitable partnership for some misguided social justice experiment. Takahashi paused at the threshold. No, Mr. Carlisle. I'm choosing to partner with people who see human value beyond dollar signs. If that's an experiment, it's one I'm willing to fund. He said something in Japanese to Layla, who translated with a grin. He says goodbye for now, but not forever. Then he was gone, leaving behind a restaurant in chaos, a mother in shock, and a 7-year-old girl who had just changed the course of multiple lives simply by speaking from the heart. The aftermath was immediate and intense. Carlisle rounded on Naomi, his face purple with rage. You're fired. Both of you. Get out. Now. You can't fire my daughter, Naomi said quietly. She doesn't work here. Don't get smart with me. You cost me millions. No. James interrupted, surprising everyone, including himself. She showed a guest kindness. If that costs millions, maybe the problem isn't her. Other servers began nodding, finding courage in numbers. The sous chef emerged from the kitchen, followed by line cooks and busboys who'd been listening through the service window. We all saw what happened, the sous chef said. We've all seen what happens here every night. The way certain people get treated different than others. Carlisle looked around, realizing he was suddenly outnumbered by his own staff. Get back to work, all of you. But something had shifted in the air, a change as palpable as weather. The careful hierarchy that kept everyone in their designated boxes had cracked, and through those cracks, light was beginning to shine. The morning after the dinner that changed everything, Naomi's phone buzzed at 7 a.m. sharp. Not a text, but a formal message through the restaurant's scheduling app from the maitre d'. Mr. Takahashi requests your presence at the Meridian Hotel Lounge, 9 a.m. Bring Layla. No uniform required. Naomi read it 3 times, her heart racing. No uniform required. Such a simple phrase, but it meant she could be herself, not the invisible server molded to fit someone else's standards. Mommy, is that about Mr. Takahashi? Layla bounced on the bed, already awake and excited. She'd barely slept, practicing Japanese phrases half the night. Yes, baby. He wants to meet with us. Should I wear my good dress? The blue one. Wear whatever makes you comfortable. He already knows who we are. They arrived at the Meridian Hotel 5 minutes early, Naomi in her best jeans and a sweater she'd saved for parent-teacher conferences, Layla in her favorite purple dress with pockets she'd insisted on because translators need pockets for important things. The lounge was quietly elegant, all warm woods and soft lighting, nothing like Luc Bernardin's aggressive opulence. A woman rose from a corner table, Japanese, perhaps 40, with an air of calm authority that made the space rearrange itself around her. Mrs. Williams? I'm Keiko Sato, Mr. Takahashi's chief of staff. Her English carried only the slightest accent, each word precisely chosen. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting us, Miss Sato. Please, just Sato is fine. She smiled at Layla. And you must be the famous translator. Mr. Takahashi spoke of little else on the ride back to his hotel. Layla beamed, then remembered her manners and gave a small bow. Hajimashite, Sato-san. Sato's eyebrows rose appreciatively. Your pronunciation is excellent. Mr. Ito has taught you well. You know about Mr. Ito? Mr. Takahashi had me research your background last night. Don't look alarmed, she added, seeing Naomi's expression. Nothing invasive. Just enough to verify what he suspected, that you are exactly who you appear to be. Takahashi appeared then, dressed down in a simple gray sweater and dark pants, looking more like a university professor than a millionaire. The transformation was striking. Without the armor of his suit, he seemed both younger and more accessible. Good morning, he said warmly. Thank you for coming. Please sit. I've ordered tea, but the kitchen can prepare anything you'd like. They settled around the table, and a server, who treated Naomi with the same deference as any guest, brought a pot of green tea and, to Layla's delight, hot chocolate with real whipped cream. Last night was theater, Takahashi began without preamble. Necessary theater, but theater nonetheless. This morning, I want to speak plainly. He pulled out a folder, surprisingly analog in the digital age. That job offer was real, but it's part of something larger. He spread out several documents, architectural renderings, curriculum plans, budget projections. Layla leaned forward, recognizing some of the kanji labels. This says, Aiko Cultural Fellowship, she read slowly. Is that for your daughter? In her memory, yes. Takahashi's voice stayed steady, practiced. After she died, I threw money at grief. Built schools, funded programs, wrote checks. But it was all distant, removed. Last night reminded me that real change happens person to person, moment to moment. Sato picked up the thread smoothly. We're establishing a cultural education center here in the city. Not another elite private school, but a community program. Afternoon classes, weekend workshops, summer intensives. Languages, yes, but also cooking, art, music, all the bridges between cultures. And you want us to what? Attend? Naomi asked carefully. Lead, Takahashi corrected. You have a degree to finish. We'll cover that. But you also have something that can't be taught. You understand what it's like to be excluded and still maintain dignity. The families we want to reach won't trust another corporate charity. They'll trust you. Naomi's hands trembled slightly as she set down her teacup. Mr. Takahashi, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not qualified. Neither was I when I started my company. Neither was Sato when she became my right hand. Qualification is just preparation meeting opportunity. He turned to Layla. What do you think? Would you like to help other kids learn what Mr. Ito taught you? Could Mr. Ito help too? He knows so many stories and songs and games. I was hoping you'd suggest that. Takahashi smiled. In fact, I'd like to meet him today, if possible. While Layla excitedly told Sato about Mr. Ito's teaching methods, two men entered the lounge. Kitchen staff from Le Bernardin, still in their work clothes. Naomi recognized them. Miguel, the sous chef, and Deshawn, a line cook who always saved the best staff meal portions for her. Mr. Takahashi. Miguel seemed surprised to be recognized, invited to sit. You asked to see us? I did. Coffee? Breakfast? Please, order anything. Once they were settled, nervously clutching coffee cups, he continued. Tell me about Carlisle. Not the public version, the truth. Miguel and Deshawn exchanged glances, years of trained silence warring with the invitation to speak freely. It's okay, Naomi encouraged. Mr. Takahashi already knows. He's been investigating. He cuts corners, Deshawn said finally. Orders us to use ingredients past their prime if they're for staff meals or customers he doesn't value. Throws out good food rather than let us take it home or donate it. He schedules people just under full-time to avoid benefits, Miguel added. Threatens immigration review if any of the international staff complain. Takes credit for our innovations, but blames us for any problems. Takahashi listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. Sato took notes on a tablet, her expression neutral but attentive. There's more, Miguel said, gaining courage. The wage theft. Clocking us out while we're still cleaning. Making servers pay for walk tabs from their tips. Charging us for uniform cleaning that never happens. Do you have documentation? Some. We're careful. Jobs like these. Deshawn shrugged. We need them. Most of us have families, bills. We can't afford to be heroes. What if you didn't need those jobs? Takahashi asked. The Cultural Center will have a teaching kitchen. We'll need instructors who understand food as culture, not just commodity. Full benefits, reasonable hours, and you'd be teaching kids who actually want to learn. Miguel's eyes widened. You're serious? Completely. But there's a condition. Takahashi's tone shifted, became businesslike. Complete transparency. Every expense documented. Every decision explained. We're building something meant to last generations. That requires absolute integrity. After years of Carlisle, transparency sounds like vacation, Deshawn said, earning a laugh from everyone. There's something else, Sato interjected. Mr. Carlisle has already begun spreading rumors about last night. Social media posts about inappropriate behavior from staff, suggestions of child endangerment. We need to be prepared for escalation. Naomi's stomach dropped. Child endangerment? Because Layla translated, because you challenged the narrative. People like Carlisle don't lose gracefully. Takahashi's expression hardened. But people like Carlisle also don't realize how vulnerable they are to truth. By afternoon, the whispers had become roars. Naomi's phone buzzed constantly with notifications she was afraid to check. A coworker finally showed her the viral post. A grainy photo of Layla at the restaurant past 9 p.m., captioned, "Restaurant allows child labor while mother neglects parenting duties." Where's CPS? The account belonged to Mrs. Hargrove's niece, but the sentiment spread like wildfire through the city's social elite. Comments poured in, each more vicious than the last. They're saying I make you work, Naomi told Layla, trying to keep her voice steady. That I'm exploiting you. That's stupid, Layla said with the blunt honesty of childhood. I was helping. That's what good people do. A knock at their apartment door made them both freeze. Through the peephole, Naomi saw a man in a wrinkled suit holding a clipboard. Health inspection, he announced when she cracked the door open. We've received complaints about food being prepared in unsanitary conditions. I don't prepare food here commercially. We'll be the judge of that. He pushed past her, photographing their small kitchen with theatrical disgust. I'll need to see permits for any food service activities. There are no food service activities. This is my home. He ignored her, making notes with exaggerated concern. Layla tugged Naomi's sleeve, whispered, "His badge number is fake." Look, it's just stickers. Naomi looked closer. Her daughter was right. She pulled out her phone, dialed the health department's main line. Yes, I'd like to verify an inspector's credentials. Badge number. She read the fake number aloud. The man's face changed. He grabbed his clipboard and headed for the door. This isn't over. You're right, Naomi called after him. It's just beginning. Before she could process what had happened, another knock came. This time it was Mr. Ito, her elderly neighbor, carrying a manila folder and looking more determined than she'd ever seen him. I heard the rumors, he said in his soft, accented English. This is wrong. I have something to help. The folder contained letters, dozens of them from parents in the building and neighborhood. Testimonials about Naomi's informal childcare network, how she watched kids during emergencies, helped with homework, never asked for payment beyond whatever someone could afford. We organized this morning, Mr. Ito explained. Mrs. Rodriguez from 3B, the Johnson family from next door, even that lawyer for the first floor. We know who you are, Naomi. We won't let them lie. Her phone rang, Sato's number. We have a situation. Someone leaked that you're meeting with Mr. Takahashi. Carlisle is claiming you're selling restaurant secrets. He's filed a cease and desist. For what? Nothing that would hold up in court, but that's not the point. He's trying to discredit you before our announcement. Can you come to the hotel? Bring Mr. Ito if he's willing. We need to accelerate our timeline. Within an hour, they were back at the Meridian, but this time in a larger conference room. Sato had arranged for a lawyer, a sharp-dressed black woman named Angela Foster, who specialized in employment law. The cease and desist is garbage, Angela said bluntly. You can't steal secrets about treating people badly. That's not proprietary information. But this CPS threat is serious. As if on cue, Naomi's phone rang. Child Protective Services, requesting a home visit within 24 hours. This is harassment, Mr. Ito said angrily. Using government services to punish someone for standing up. It's more than that, Takahashi said, entering with a tablet. Look at this. The screen showed a video. Someone Naomi recognized as Carlisle's assistant, meeting with a fake health inspector in a parking garage, money changing hands. How did you? Security cameras are everywhere these days, Sato said mildly. And Mr. Takahashi owns the company that makes most of them in this district. We also have this. She produced another tablet showing screenshots from a group chat between Carlisle, Mrs. Hargrove, and several other restaurant regulars, explicitly planning the harassment campaign. They're not even trying to hide it, Layla said, reading over her mother's shoulder. They're proud of it. Arrogance makes people careless, Takahashi observed. They're so used to consequences not applying to them that they document their own crimes. The door opened again, and Miguel entered with 3 other restaurant workers. Mr. Takahashi, we have something you need to see. They brought printed emails, years of them, showing Carlisle's systematic wage theft, discrimination, and health code violations he'd ordered them to hide. He's trying to get us to sign NDAs, Deshawn explained, offering severance if we promise not to talk about last night. But Maria here, she saved everything. Maria, the quiet prep cook Naomi had barely spoken to, stepped forward. My daughter is in law school. She told me to document everything. 3 years of evidence. This changes things, Angela said, reviewing the papers. This isn't just defense anymore. We can go on offense. No, Takahashi said, surprising everyone. Not yet. Carlisle wants a war of reputation. We give him something else, transparency. He turned to Naomi. How do you feel about telling your story publicly? Not defending, not attacking, just truth. I'm scared, Naomi admitted. They have money, connections, influence. They have fear, Mr. Ito interrupted. Fear of losing status, fear of change, fear of people like us being seen as equals. But fear makes people stupid. Truth makes people strong. Layla took her mother's hand. Remember what you always tell me? That doing right isn't always easy, but it's always right. The CPS worker arrived that evening. A tired-looking woman named Sandra, who'd clearly been pulled from her actual cases to investigate this complaint. She found Naomi's apartment spotless, Layla doing homework at the kitchen table while Mr. Ito taught her origami, and a refrigerator full of healthy food. I have to ask, Sandra said after her inspection revealed nothing concerning. Is your daughter being forced to work as a translator? I helped someone who couldn't communicate, Layla said firmly. Just like when I helped Mrs. Rodriguez's kids with English homework. Is helping people illegal now? Sandra's lips twitched. No, sweetheart. Helping people is never illegal. She turned to Naomi. I'll be filing this as unfounded harassment. Whoever called this and should be ashamed of themselves. After she left, Naomi found herself crying. Tears of relief, exhaustion, and anger at having to prove she was a good mother to strangers. Tomorrow will be harder, Sato warned during a late evening strategy call. The press dinner is when everything becomes public. Carlisle will try to control the narrative. Then we make sure he can't, Takahashi said. Mrs. Williams, I need you to trust me. What we're about to do will change everything, for better or worse. Are you ready? Naomi looked at Layla, already asleep on Mr. Ito's shoulder. This child who'd started everything by simply being kind. She thought about all the times she'd stayed silent, accepted less, made herself smaller to fit in spaces that didn't want her. I'm ready. Good. Because tomorrow, we show them what real standards look like. The morning of the press dinner brought one last attempt at sabotage. A slick-looking man appeared on morning news, claiming to be a Japanese language expert, stating that Layla had dangerously mistranslated Takahashi's words and created an international incident. But Layla was ready. With Sato's help, she'd recorded a response video, a simple, polite explanation in both English and Japanese, demonstrating her fluency with a children's song, a formal business greeting, and a casual conversation about her favorite books. She ended with a haiku she'd written. Words are bridges built not from gold but from kindness. All may cross freely. The video went viral within hours, not because of scandal, but because of its sweetness. A 7-year-old black girl from a working-class neighborhood speaking fluent Japanese, defending her mother with poetry. The narrative was shifting. Let them come, Takahashi said as they prepared for the dinner. We have something they don't, the truth. And the truth, as your Mr. Ito says, makes people strong. Lou Bernardine had never looked more magnificent or more hollow. Every surface gleamed with desperate perfection, as if Carlisle believed enough polish could blind people to the rot underneath. Media crews adjusted their equipment, while city officials mingled with donors, everyone pretending they didn't know this dinner was actually a battlefield. Naomi stood near the back entrance with Layla, Mr. Ito, Miguel, and Deshawn. They looked like refugees at a royal wedding. Necessary witnesses, but unwelcome guests. Angela Foster stood with them, her presence a legal shield against whatever Carlisle might attempt. Remember, Angela murmured, let him speak first. The more rope he takes, the more he has to hang himself with. Carlisle had already begun working the room, his voice carrying that particular tone of false intimacy reserved for people with cameras. Tonight represents a transformational moment for our city's hospitality industry, he announced, gesturing broadly. We're setting new standards for international partnership and cultural exchange. Mrs. Hargrove circulated nearby, her expression suggesting she'd recovered from last night's humiliation and come back for revenge. She'd brought reinforcements, a cluster of old-money socialites who whispered behind raised hands while shooting daggers at Naomi's group. Ladies and gentlemen, Carlisle commanded the microphone like he owned it, which, technically, he did. Before we begin, I want to address some unfortunate misunderstandings from recent events. Here it comes, Naomi thought, gripping Layla's hand. Our establishment has always prided itself on the highest standards of service and cultural sensitivity, which is why we're announcing tonight a revolutionary partnership with global investors to create the city's premier international dining experience. He paused for effect, and in that pause, Naomi noticed Takahashi and Sato enter through the main doors. They moved quietly to a corner table, almost invisible despite being the entire reason for this gathering. Of course, Carlisle continued, his tone shifting to practice concern. We must address the concerning incident involving one of our former employees who allowed her young child to interfere with an important guest creating what could have been an international embarrassment. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several cameras swung toward Naomi. Layla started to speak, but Mr. Ito placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Not yet, little one," he whispered. "Let him reveal himself." Fortunately, Carlyle went on. "Our quick thinking and cultural expertise prevented disaster. We've since implemented strict protocols to ensure children are never again exploited for." Exploited? The voice came from the corner, quiet but carrying the kind of authority that made everything else stop. Takahashi rose from his seat, moving toward the microphone with deliberate calm. "Mr. Takahashi." Carlyle's smile looked painted on. "We're honored you could join us. As I was explaining, we've taken steps to ensure." "To ensure what exactly?" Takahashi's tone remained conversational, but there was steel underneath. "That no child ever again shows kindness to a stranger. That no mother ever again allows her daughter to help someone struggling to communicate." "That's not what but it's what you said." "Exploitation. Interference. Embarrassment." Takahashi turned to address the room. Interesting words to describe a 7-year-old girl offering to translate for someone speaking her studied language. Mrs. Hargrove couldn't contain herself. "This is ridiculous." We all saw what happened. A server's child running wild in the dining room. Running wild? Takahashi smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. She approached my table, bowed with perfect propriety, and asked in fluent Japanese if I needed assistance. "If that's wild behavior, perhaps we need more wildness in the world." He gestured to someone near the door. A man entered, the supposed Japanese language expert from the morning news. But instead of supporting Carlyle's narrative, he walked straight to Takahashi and bowed deeply. "Tell them who you really are," Takahashi instructed. The man straightened, looking embarrassed. "My name is Bradley Coleman. I'm an actor. Mr. Carlyle paid me $5,000 to claim I spoke Japanese and discredit the little girl's translation." The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Carlyle's face cycled through colors like a broken television. "He's lying," Carlyle sputtered. "This is entrapment." "No," Sato said, stepping forward with her tablet. "This is evidence." She connected the device to the room's presentation screen. The first image appeared, Carlyle's assistant meeting with a fake health inspector, money clearly visible changing hands. Then came the screenshots of the group chat, each message more damning than the last. "Make sure CPS knows she's neglecting her child," Sato read aloud. "If we can't fire her, we'll make her quit." Those are taken out of context. Then let's provide context. Takahashi nodded to Miguel and Deshawn, who stepped forward with boxes of documents. 3 years of wage theft, Miguel announced, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Forcing us to work off the clock. Stealing tips. Threatening immigration reviews if we complained. Health code violations," Deshawn added. "Ordered us to serve expired ingredients to customers he deemed unimportant. We have emails, texts, recorded conversations." Maria, the quiet prep cook, found her voice. "He made Rosa work through labor contractions because he didn't want to pay for a replacement shift. She had her baby in the hospital parking lot." Each revelation landed like a physical blow. The city officials who'd come expecting networking were backing toward the exits. Donors pulled out phones, likely calling lawyers. The media feast had become a feeding frenzy, but not the kind Carlyle had planned. "Stop," Carlyle shouted. "You can't just— This is my restaurant. My reputation." "Your reputation?" Naomi stepped forward, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. "What about our reputations? The servers you called too ethnic for front-room service? The cooks whose recipes you stole and claimed as your own? The families who couldn't afford doctor visits because you kept us just under full-time to avoid providing insurance?" She pulled out her phone, showed her banking app. "This is my account balance after 6 years of premium service at your establishment. $43. That's what's left after rent, utilities, and keeping my daughter fed and clothed. But you spent $5,000 to hire a fake expert to discredit a 7-year-old. Layla stepped beside her mother. "Mr. Carlyle, my teacher says lying is wrong even when you're scared. Are you scared? The simplicity of the question, the pure innocence of it, seemed to break something in the room's atmosphere. Several people laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine surprise at a child cutting through adult pretense. Takahashi returned to the microphone. Shall I tell you what really happened that night? Or rather, what's been happening every night in establishments like this across the country? He didn't wait for permission. I spoke Japanese, yes. But he paused, let the moment build. I also speak perfect English. Have for 30 years. The revelation hit like thunder. Every dismissive comment, every cruel observation, every moment the elite had revealed their true selves thinking he couldn't understand, it all came crashing back. You knew. Mrs. Hardrove's voice cracked. The whole time, you understood everything. Every word, every sneer, every assumption that wealth should only speak one language, wear one face, follow one set of rules. He looked directly at her. You said the standards had fallen because they let anyone in. You were right. The standards have fallen, but not in the way you meant. He gestured to Naomi and Layla. The standards fell when kindness became weakness, when service became servitude, when we stopped seeing the humanity in people who make our comfortable lives possible. This is entrapment. Carlyle tried again, desperate. You can't document criminal behavior? Actually, we can, and we have. Angela Foster stepped forward with a folder. Wage theft is a felony in this state, Mr. Carlyle. So is conspiracy to file false CPS reports. You might want to call your lawyer. As if on cue, 2 police officers entered. Not dramatically, not aggressively, but with the quiet certainty of process servers who knew their job. Richard Carlyle, one asked, "We need you to come with us for questioning regarding multiple labor law violations." This is impossible. I have connections. I have. You have the right to remain silent, the officer continued, beginning the familiar words as Carlyle was led away, still protesting. The room stood frozen, watching the emperor revealed to have no clothes, no power, nothing but the hollow shell of perceived authority. 6 weeks later, the old Paradise Library branch hummed with new life. What had been a forgotten building in a neglected neighborhood was now the home of the Aiko Cultural Fellowship, its rooms filled with the sound of children laughing in multiple languages. Naomi stood in what they'd converted into the main classroom, watching Layla help a younger child write her name in Japanese characters. The transformation still felt surreal, from serving entitled strangers to directing a program that would change lives. The first official class starts in 10 minutes, Sato announced, clipboard in hand but smiling. 43 students enrolled for Japanese, 35 for Spanish, 28 for Mandarin, and somehow Mr. Ito convinced 15 teenagers to sign up for traditional tea ceremony. Mr. Ito sat in the corner, demonstrating brush techniques to a group of fascinated 6-year-olds. His health had improved remarkably since becoming the fellowship's senior cultural advisor. Having purpose, he said, was better than any medicine. Ms. Williams? A teenage boy approached nervously. My mom wanted me to thank you. She's the one who... He hesitated. She used to work at the restaurant. Rosa? You help her get the back wages she was owed. Rosa had received a settlement of $30,000 once the labor board finished investigating. Enough to cover the medical bills from her parking lot delivery, with some left over for her son's college fund. How is she? Naomi asked. Good. Better. She's taking English classes here in the evenings. Says if a 7-year-old can speak 3 languages, she can at least master one. Through the window, Naomi could see the teaching kitchen Miguel and Deshawn had designed. They were currently showing a group of young adults basic knife skills, but these weren't culinary students. They were kids from a neighborhood who'd never had anyone teach them to cook beyond microwave dinners. Every cuisine tells a story, Miguel was saying. Your grandmother's recipes are history books. Your spices are geography lessons. Food is culture you can taste. The front door chimed, and Takahashi entered with a small group. He'd been bringing potential donors through all week. Not the society types who'd frequented Le Bernardin, but tech entrepreneurs, immigrant success stories, people who understood building from nothing. This is incredible, one visitor said, watching children of different backgrounds sharing tables, teaching each other words from their native languages. It's like a future that actually works. It's not the future, Takahashi corrected gently. It's the present we choose to create. Layla ran over, bowing properly before switching to excited English. Mr. Takahashi, did you see? We have 17 kids signed up for the cross-cultural story circle. We're going to share folktales from everyone's backgrounds. Speaking of stories, Takahashi said, I have news about Mr. Carlyle. The room quieted. The former restaurant owner's trial had been all over the news, not just for the wage theft, but for the conspiracy charges, the harassment, the years of documented abuse. 18 months minimum security, 3 years probation, and he has to pay restitution to every employee he cheated. Takahashi's expression remained neutral. Le Bernardine is being sold. The workers are forming a cooperative to buy it. A worker-owned restaurant? Deschamps laughed from the kitchen doorway. Carlyle must be dying. Perhaps. Or perhaps he'll learn what we already know, that dignity isn't about position. It's about purpose. A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Mrs. Hargrove stood in the doorway, looking deeply uncomfortable but determined. Behind her, a young boy with thick glasses clutched an iPad like a shield. My grandson, she said stiffly. He has difficulties with social situations. Someone suggested your program might help. The boy looked up at the colorful banners in different languages, the children's artwork covering the walls, the mix of faces and voices. Something in his expression shifted from fear to interest. We have a coding class that incorporates language learning, Sato offered carefully. Very structured, very logical. Some of our neurodivergent students find it easier to connect through screens before faces. I like patterns, the boy said quietly. Languages are patterns, right? The best kind, Layla said, approaching slowly. Want to see? I can show you how Japanese characters build on each other, like code blocks. Mrs. Hargrove watched her grandson follow Layla to a table, engaging more readily than she'd seen in months. I owe you an apology, she said to Naomi, the words clearly costing her. I was wrong. About many things. We all have room to learn, Naomi replied. That's why we're here. As the afternoon progressed, the center filled with purposeful chaos. In one room, teenagers practiced K-pop choreography while learning Korean. In another, elderly immigrants taught traditional crafts while sharing stories in their native tongues. The kitchen produced smells from 6 different continents as families cooked together, recipes becoming bridges between generations. Ms. Naomi, a small hand tugged her sleeve. One of the newer students, a Syrian refugee child, held up a paper. Look, Layla taught me to write my name in English and Japanese and Arabic all together. That's beautiful, Amira. Do you want to put on our achievement wall? The achievement wall had been Layla's idea, a place where every small victory was celebrated. First successful conversation in a new language. First friend made across cultural lines. First time cooking a grandmother's recipe. Each milestone marked with ceremony and genuine joy. I need to tell you something, Takahashi said, drawing Naomi aside. The investigation into Carlyle uncovered something unexpected. He's been hiding assets, including an education fund he was supposed to manage for employee families. Nearly $200,000. What happens to it? The court has ordered it distributed to affected families. Yours included. Layla's college education is secured, if you'll accept it. Naomi felt tears threaten. After years of worrying about every dollar, the idea of Layla's future being secure was almost too much to process. Additionally, Takahashi continued, I'm establishing a scholarship in Aiko's name. Full ride to any university for students who demonstrate exceptional cross-cultural leadership. The committee would like Layla to be the first recipient when she's of age. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep doing what you're doing. Building bridges where others built walls. The afternoon turned to evening, and the center's first official day drew to a close. Parents arrived to collect children who chattered excitedly in mixture of languages. Mr. Ito led his tea ceremony students in a formal closing ritual. The kitchen staff packed leftover food for families to take home, Nothing wasted, everyone fed. As Naomi locked the front door, Layla beside her, she looked back at what they'd built in such a short time. The building itself hadn't changed much. New paint, better lighting, fixed windows. But the spirit of the place, the possibility it represented, that was transformation. "Mommy," Layla said thoughtfully, "remember when Mr. Takahashi couldn't order dinner and everyone was mean about it?" "I remember. That was only 6 weeks ago. Feels like a lifetime." Mr. Ito says sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest moments, like saying hello in someone's language. They walked home through their neighborhood, passing familiar faces who now greeted them with words from different tongues: Spanish from the bodega owner, Bengali from the taxi driver, Mandarin from the family who ran a laundromat. Each greeting a small bridge, a tiny connection across difference. "We should write to Aiko," Layla said suddenly. "I know she's not here, but Mr. Takahashi says in Japanese culture, you can send letters to people who've passed on. We could tell her about the center, about how her dad is helping kids like she would have wanted." "That's a beautiful idea, baby." They climbed the stairs to their apartment, the same apartment where CPS had investigated them, where fake inspectors had tried to intimidate them, where they'd nearly lost everything for the crime of showing kindness. Now it was just home, humble but honest, small but sufficient. On the refrigerator, held by magnets, was the business card Takahashi had first given Naomi. Next to it, Layla's haiku from her viral video, written in her careful hand. Below both, a new edition, a photo from today's opening, showing the main room full of children and adults, all different colors and backgrounds, learning together. "Mommy," Layla asked as they prepared dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad, but made with love. "Are you happy?" Naomi thought about the question. 6 weeks ago, happiness had seemed like luxury she couldn't afford, something for people who didn't have to count every penny and minute. Now she directed a program that would change lives. Her daughter was thriving. They had a community that supported them, purpose that drove them, and a future that finally felt possible. "Yes, baby. I'm happy." "Good." Because Mr. Takahashi says happiness shared doubles and sadness shared halves. She paused, then added with a grin, "But I think kindness shared multiplies forever." Outside their window, the city went about its evening routines. Somewhere in a minimum security facility, Richard Carlisle was learning what it meant to have no power over others. Somewhere, in a boardroom, Takahashi was convincing another donor that investment in people yielded better returns than any stock. Somewhere, in homes across the neighborhood, children were teaching their parents new words, building bridges one syllable at a time. And in a small apartment where dignity lived despite the world's attempts to diminish it, a mother and daughter sat down to dinner, their conversation flowing between English and Japanese, seasoned with laughter and hope. The bridges Layla had dreamed of building were no longer just metaphors. They were real, connecting people across languages and cultures, creating paths where walls once stood. All because one night, at a dinner where no one understood, a child chose to listen, and a mother chose to let her speak. The camera, if there had been one, would pull back slowly from their warm kitchen to the building, to the block, to the neighborhood, to the city. And in each frame, more bridges would be visible. Conversations, connections, communities spreading outward like ripples from stone dropped in still water. At the center of it all, the Aiko Cultural Fellowship stood as proof of a simple truth. Dignity does speak every language, if we let it. What would you have done if you were in Naomi's place? Stood quietly, or spoken up when it mattered most? If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories.